All right, Madam Chair, we're in public session.
Thank you very much, Walt. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the meeting of the Joint Commission on Public Ethics. The meeting is now called to order. As with all JCOPE meetings, we are using video conferencing technology. The public session of this meeting is accessible on JCOPE's website to watch via live stream. A couple of important reminders. It is important that only one person speak at a time. In addition, I ask that when you speak, you identify yourself so that we have a clear record. Please also remember to mute your phone when you are not speaking. Deputy General Counsel, do we have a quorum?
Yes, ma'am, we have 13.
Great, thank you. The second item on the agenda is the approval of the meeting minutes of the Commission for May 25th, 2021. Are there any corrections to the minutes behind your attachment A?
Yes, good morning, Madam Chair. I have a correction on page 9, the second full paragraph. It has me voting both for and against the motion. And I want to correct that to say that I voted for and to eliminate my voting against. Do you see it says, okay?
General Counsel Sam, do you see that edit?
I do. This is the motion about the Rules Committee, just so everyone is clear. Yeah,
I think specifically, yes, this is specifically to record the meeting.
Okay, correct. So it's a vote of 5-8, I believe, instead of 5-9.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any additional corrections to the minutes? Okay. Being done, can I please have a motion to adopt the May 25th minutes of the public session of the Commission?
So moved, Fisher.
Thank you.
Hearing.
Thank you. All in favor, please raise your hand.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, any opposed?
Any opposed?
That JCOPE opposed or just late? Commissioner JCOPE, are you opposed or
Voting
in favor?
Voting for.
Thank you. Let's move on to item 3 on the agenda, reports from staff.
Morning. The May monthly operations report is attached at tab B. You can see that it was indeed a busy month. If anyone has any questions about the information, staff is happy to respond.
If I may, for just a second, I'm sorry, Vine, and could you please mute your microphones? Thank you.
Were there any questions? All right, thank you. As a reminder, we expect the legislative FDS filings to be delivered to the Commission by close of business tomorrow, and the member filings will be posted on the website soon thereafter. I should add that following the last meeting, we did confirm with the Legislative Ethics Committee that they date stamped the original filings, and they give that version, that is the original date stamped version, along with any amendments of the legislative filings to JCOPE when they submit those to us. So I wanted to make that clarification. Office update. The Buffalo move is scheduled to occur next month.
Excuse me, Mr. Executive Director. I appreciate that update. I think at the last meeting, when we had that discussion, I asked the staff to come back to us about explaining what the public policy was for why the legislature has a delay in providing its FDSs. I mean, I'm happy to talk now, or if the staff didn't have an opportunity to get to that, we can put it off to next meeting, but I think it's important to understand that.
Commissioner Horowitz, it's a statutory provision, and I just couldn't speak for what the legislature's intent was in that case, but I'd be happy to discuss this with you further offline.
Yeah, I just think it's important if the commission's going to discuss FDSs to understand why there's that difference for legislators and not for anybody else. But I appreciate your checking, Martin. Thank you.
All right, so if I understand correctly, we will look into the legislative history and see if there's some background on that we can provide. With respect to
Thank
our
you.
infrastructure. Yes, thank you, Commissioner. The Buffalo move, again, is scheduled for next month. We will let everyone know after that move is completed, but it seems as if everything is moving along smoothly. The new office space in New York City, we are told, will be available in early September, and we plan to move from our temporary space downtown to the new office space following the September meeting of the Commission. Finally, with respect to operations, the new Rules Committee of the Commission has met and has begun discussing proposals to improve the order, the efficiency, and the productivity of our meetings. Its work is continuing, and I will keep the Commission updated on that. The annual report.
Excuse me, before you go on, I'm just curious, who is on the Rules Committee?
We now have Judge Braun, Judge Newton, the chair,
And Commissioner Fisher.
and Commissioner Fisher. And we have convened, we've met, working on a draft to move along the committee's discussions, and we plan to meet again shortly. We will have a further report and perhaps recommendations at or before the next meeting for the Commission. The annual report. There's a final draft that needs to be put in final form, and we expect that will be publicly released by the end of next week. And it'll be available for discussion at and updating of the Commission for the next meeting. And finally, with respect to operations, the new online lobbying application has been completed. And we would like to just do a brief demonstration of that for the Commission. So I'm going to ask Carol Quinn, who's overseeing that process. We'll just do a brief introduction. Carol?
Thank you, Judge. You can all hear me?
Yeah.
So today we're going to demonstrate to you how the public can easily search for and find information related to lobbying filings submitted by lobbyists and clients. The public search query and functionality represents the culmination of 3 years of work by staff here at JCOPE. One of the main goals in this and everything else we do in the lobbying unit is to increase transparency for the public so they can easily see who is lobbying who on what topic. And so what you're about to see in a few seconds here, a demonstration of, it began with the adoption of the lobbying regulations and the launch of the new lobbying application back in 2019. Those were both effective January 1st of 2019. And so one thing I do want to point out is what you're about to see today is not new. It's been accessible since we launched in 2019, but it has been further enhanced since that time, and it really represents a huge improvement over the way the public could search for and find information related to lobbying filings and lobbying information prior to 2019. So the lobbying regulations and the lobbying application really work hand in hand to capture clear, concise information from the filers, and they serve as really the foundation for this public search query and functionality that you're about to see. So most recently, in conjunction with the 2021 amendments to the regulations, we also made further changes to the lobbying application. Again, all with the goal of capturing clear, concise data from the filings that are submitted and making it easily searchable and displayed to the public. And these changes also actually streamline the process at the same time for the filers themselves. And so one final thing I'll note before I hand it over to Marlena Diaz is that this information that you're about to see, this public search functionality, it's available in real time. So now the public, the media, filers, interested parties can use this public search query functionality to find out this information in real time. So I'm going to turn it over to Marlena Diaz, who's the Assistant Director of Communications, and she's going to go over the public search query and demonstrate the key features to it. Marlena?
Hi, good morning, everyone. As Carol mentioned, my name is Marlena Diaz. I'm the Assistant Director here at JCOPE for Communications, and I'm very excited to be able to have the opportunity to present the public search query to all of you. I'll be taking a moment now to switch off to full screen mode for all of the participants. So at this point in time, everyone within the commission meeting room as well as online should be able to see the JCOPE website. And I'll begin, most importantly, with letting everyone know exactly where they can access the public search query, or PSQ for short. We've implemented it in various different places in the website in order to make it easy for anyone that's looking for the PSQ to be able to find it quickly. We have it available on our homepage here, underneath our topics of interest under public data. It's also accessible here under our About, under our public data page, as well as under our lobbying under the view of filing section here. So just bear with me one moment as I scroll down so that you can take a quick look at our public data page. Here under our lobbying data on demand, we have access to both our legacy PSQ that maintains our 2018 and prior filings, as well as our new 2019 and future filings. Now here is the primary interface of the public search query of the PSQ. Now we wanted to design it for both entry-level users as well as our more high-end sophisticated users that may be interested in doing data analytics, exporting spreadsheets, things of that nature. Now the public search query was designed to have three major search components. We have here the global search, our search by disclosure type, as well as our search by lobbying focus. Now, each one of these main primary search areas allows the public to be able to search for very specific and unique information, and we did that intentionally. So right now I'm going to do a quick demonstration of the types of information that you can locate within the global search. Now, it's very easy for someone to be able to see exactly what area of the public search query they're in, because these tabs here, they highlight blue in order to indicate to someone exactly what the active tab or active search screen you're viewing. Now, there's two different things that we've done here to kind of make searching a little bit easier for you. We wanted to incorporate some functionality that may be recognizable to people. Now, each one of these three primary search components do have what we call this text search box here. Now, an individual can type in the name of an individual lobbyist or an organization and quickly do a search that way. Now, and this should be recognizable to anyone that's used a search browser such as Google before, or an individual can actually select a filing year and conduct a search that way. So right now, if someone were to call us and wanting to know exactly who was registered in 2021, it's very simple. They can select the year. They'll simply hit view results, and it's as quick as that. If you've noticed, it took only a few seconds for all of this information to appear on the screen. Now, internally, we normally refer to the global search as a relationship finder, and I'll explain a little bit why we call it that way. Now, each one of these rows here of information actually represents a lobbyist statement of registration within our actual lobbying application. The information is clearly laid out for the public or any interested party. You can clearly see the biennial year here, your principal lobbyist, all of the names of the individual lobbyists that may be associated to a filing, your contractual client and beneficial client. Now, we refer to it as a relationship finder because oftentimes it's not unusual for us to receive phone calls from individuals wanting to know if a specific organization or a specific individual is actually doing lobbying. And this is why we call it the relationship finder. So if someone wants to know, for instance, if Google is registered with us, they could simply type in Google above here, hit view results, and they can find all of the information that way. Now, we did organize the information so that it is filtered in two different ways. As I mentioned right here, each one of these rows does represent a unique registration, and we added some filtering abilities here. So if someone just wants to see information related specifically to this registration here, they could click on this view, and it's going to give you a snapshot of the subjects that are being lobbied on, as well as the specific filings that are related to that specific relationship. In this case, this organization is lobbying on their own behalf. So we can take a moment now to view exactly what one of these filings looks like. So here, what we've done is we've also allowed the public, in order to be able to access any of the amendments. And this is a major change that happened from our 2018 filings to our new biennial period. So now if there's any original and amended filings, the public has access to all of that information in just one or two simple clicks. Here, I'll just scroll down briefly, and you can see all of the information that's contained in a specific bi-monthly filing is available for the public. It's very organized. It's easy to understand. If there were any sub or co-lobbying relationships, it's easy for someone to see that. Here, we're taking a quick snapshot of all of the compensation and expense information related to the bi-monthly. Any expenses that are over $75 are neatly organized here under our itemized expenses. And we've done a lot of work to create really great, transparent best practices when it comes to data organization. For all of our itemized expense purposes, these are all hard-coded into our system. We really took a new step in 2021, and we made sure to remove any manually data entered expense purposes. And really what this did was it created more transparent data. It allowed the search capabilities to even work a lot more faster. So I'm just going to scroll up here for a second so that you can see. So this filing contains a lot of information. We give you a total expense, your lobbying subjects, and all of your state and municipal level focuses and party lobbied information. All of this information is contained in a single filing. And it's very easy for someone to be able to print and export all of this information. Use the scrolling. And now I'm going to take a look at something that we've really worked a lot on when it comes to enhancements, and that is our filer library. Now here in the filer library, I personally consider this really to be a powerhouse of information when it comes to either the organizations or an individual lobbyist. In this case, we're going to take a brief look at one of our organization profiles. Here, if there are any name changes, so let's say the organization changed its name to 100 Solutions, it would be available here. So it's easy for the public or any interested party to keep track of any of those organization name changes that may happen through the life of that organization. And here what we've really done is something that was really important to us was the concept of interconnectivity. Now, in our old legacy application, in order for someone in the public or someone in the media to be able to find out if an organization was also a lobbyist and a client, if they were submitting registrations and bi-monthlies along with client semi-annuals, that search was actually pretty cumbersome back in the day. They would have to do individual searches for each one of these different categories. And now we've completely revolutionized that by creating this filer library. In essence, now all of the information, all of the submitted filings that a particular organization may do throughout the course of a biennial are all neatly organized in this one area. So I'm going to take a look at the bi-monthlies here. Now, we do understand that individuals like to search for information in all different types of ways. So we wanted to make this particular area here incredibly flexible. And we've done that by allowing a user to select a minimum anywhere from 10 entries all the way up to 100 entries. And here they can really organize the information and filter it out based on their own preference. All of these columns here can sort by ascending or descending order, so it really makes searching for a particular bi-monthly very simple. You can organize it by year, you can organize it by filing period, you can organize it by client, and so on and so forth. So it makes organization very, very simple. And this is an area that we are actually very proud of here. And as you can see, it's very easy for someone to also then again, in terms of interconnectivity, look at all of the client semi-annual reports that this particular organization is affiliated to, any sources of funding. So it's a really one-stop comprehensive library of information related to a specific organization. And now we're going to briefly move on to our search by disclosure type. In this area of the public search query, it's really more focused on these specialized filings. So if an individual wants to take a look at a reportable business relationship, source of funding, if they're curious about what types of lobbyists are actually lobbying on disbursements of public monies, all of the information is very easy for them to find. So in this case, if somebody wanted to take a look at disbursements of public monies, who's actively lobbying on that for 2021? Again, it's very simple. They can simply select the year dropdown, hit view results, and all of the information is available for them on the screen in a matter of moments. Now, something that we've also done with the public search query is making sure that we have as much of that important information available in the primary search results. And we did this intentionally because our legacy application, you'd really have to drill down into the filing to figure out if that filing it was exactly what you were looking for. Here, all of the information is presented to you up front. You have your description, you have your compensation amounts, your reimbursed expenses, and you even have the ability to click on the filing and view more information if you wanted to. And something also that we incorporated into the public search query is allowing the user the ability to create custom data sets or Excel spreadsheets based on these results. Now, previously, we were only able to provide the public with data sets twice a year. Now, anyone can run a data set at any point in time. They can run a data set in the morning, in the afternoon, in the evening. It's open for them, and they're able to utilize it 24/7. And it's very simple for someone to be able to do this. All they would need to do is just select all under the show entries. They would come here, they would click on this green CSV icon, and in a matter of moments, they would have a full Excel spreadsheet downloaded onto their computer where they could manipulate the data, do their own data analytics as they saw fit. Now, the search by lobbying focus section. I will say that this is our most popular section of the public search query, and it's really where we spent the most time in creating a lot of these new enhancements. Now, for subjects lobbied, we've added two very unique enhancements this year. I'll just scroll down quickly. So a lot of these lobbying subjects, they do have their primary and their subcategories. So we have here agribusiness. You can do a quick search. This year, we've actually received a data request wanting to know of a specific subject lobbied. It was very easy for them. We even added now total expense and total compensation information for you. This is its own unique data set as well. And I'll take you on a quick tour on the state and municipal activities. Our most popular section is our legislative bills. If someone wants to know exactly what state bills are being lobbied on for 2021, they can see that very quickly. They can even filter out and see just the bi-monthly information. And it gives you not only the bill information, but the type of lobbying communication, as well as directly who those individuals are that are being influenced those specific party lobbied.
Ms. Diaz, I'm sorry, this is Camille. I want to say, first of all, thank you so much for this really comprehensive walkthrough of the functionality. Unfortunately, we do need to move on. We have quite a bit of business, but I would imagine that if any commissioner wants to be walked through this, they can certainly reach out and arrange for that to be done. Is that right?
Yes, of course. We're available for questions at any point. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Yep, but you do have one question, I'm sorry.
So a quick question. So this is fantastic. It's really great. If users have problems or if they have suggestions, is there a way to get feedback from them going forward so we can continue to improve this in the future?
Yes, absolutely. Actually, all of our enhancements, the majority of them have come from data requests that have come from either other good government groups or from the media. So for anyone who's interested in specific data, we always recommend that they can contact Walt, and then we can collaborate together on how to create more and more enhancements, because we always say this is a moving target and we're just getting started here.
That's great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Carol, Marlena. It's an extraordinary application, both at the input end. I think it's really been an enhancement for those who are putting data into for filers who are adding information and making that information uniform and enhancing public access to all of that lobbying data. It's just extraordinary. Thank you. That's what I have for the operations, unless there are any further questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. It really is an incredible application. So we're going to move on to item 4 on the agenda, which is a proposal relating to FDS filer access to information. Commissioners, as you all would be aware, this is a resolution that would allow any FDS filer to find out who has requested their FDS, including by law enforcement subpoenas. This was previously raised as an amendment to the record access regs. But Commissioner Levine agreed to table it, so it would give commissioners an additional opportunity to review the proposal. So, Commissioner Levine, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. The proposal has been the object of very close scrutiny within the Commission, by staff, by the commissioners, and by interested parties who are concerned about regulations and amendments that we adopt. Therefore, I will not elaborate beyond what you have expressed, Madam Chair, except to note the critique that the proposal follows the New York City Charter as it is applicable to the Conflicts of Interest Board, requiring that the filer be notified if there's an inquiry be made, is not part of this proposal. Thank you, Madam Chair. I move it.
Thank you, Commissioner Levine. I'm sorry, did you say at the end that you moved the resolution?
I do.
Do we have a second?
Commissioner Weissman.
Thank you. Is there any additional discussion on the resolution?
Yes, if you don't mind.
Thank you. Please go ahead.
Hello. I'd like to offer a friendly amendment. For a number of meetings, I've always suggested that we follow the existing FOIL under the Public Officers Law whenever issues arose about protecting secrecy or unwarranted invasions of privacy, et cetera, et cetera. I see that we received a letter from some interested groups who have followed my suggestion and said that we ought to just apply FOIL. So I'd like to offer that as a friendly amendment, and that is that there should be a log kept of requests and that it should be FOILable. And there's also, within the letter that was sent to us, there was also a request that there be a presumptive public display of officials' filings without the necessity for a FOIL request. And that would be for anyone who is directly appointed by an elected official including the governor and the leaders in the legislature. I'm fine with that too. So what I'd like to do is offer as a friendly amendment that there be a foilable log kept of requests, and that FDSs presumptively, unless there's a reason to hide it under FOIL, that they presumptively are available without the necessity of a FOIL request for all persons who are directly appointed by elected officials.
Thank you, Judge Yates. Commissioner Levine, your opinion on the friendly amendment?
Commissioner, you were muted. You're unmuted now.
Can you hear me now, Madam Chair?
Yes.
I accept the amendment. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So we now have a resolution that includes the friendly amendment. Is there any additional discussion? Commissioner Horowitz and then Commissioner Fisher.
I'd like to ask the staff if, in receipt of the letter that the commission and the commissioners got earlier this month from reInvent New York and a number of other civic groups related to Commissioner Levine's proposal, has the staff had an opportunity to digest fully what was in that letter? And is the staff looking to get any additional information from any third parties about the issues that are raised in Commissioner Levine's motion? Thank you. Somebody's unmuted, and I'm really having trouble hearing you, Sandy. So I ask everybody to just mute unless the speakers. I don't think it's on you. I think it was somebody else. Thank you.
Hopefully we're not muted here. What I was saying is that we have begun the analysis of it. The proposals that we received in that letter are somewhat inconsistent in our view. However, they do highlight one thing. We are in the midst of a rulemaking with respect to this very subject. And I believe the comment period continues into July. And my understanding is we're not going to have an opportunity to deal with the full commentary likely until the September meeting, at which time we will have the comment that has been offered there, because it does include a comment or comments on our proposed rulemaking. Presumably, we will receive other comments on this very subject. And it seems to us, from the staff perspective, that the sensible thing to do would be to take all these comments and proposals into account when we address the rulemaking itself, come to the culmination of that procedure, decide whether or not the proposed rules will be adopted in the form in which they were published, or whether we're going to amend them in some way and put them out, I think, for a further but a more abbreviated rulemaking. That seems to be the sensible way to proceed, to take all of these proposals rather than do it piecemeal, some of it by resolution, some of it by formal rulemaking, and then have a hodgepodge, in effect, of resolutions on the one hand and formal rules on the other, governing the same subject. That is, the propounding or the publication of filings by some or all of the filers in whatever way, whether or not requests have to be made, and whether requests become available publicly, whether notifications go out, whether a filer has to make a request for that information, whether the request has been made. It just doesn't seem to be an integrated process. So from the staff perspective, we would prefer, rather than do this by separate resolution, that it be bound up into the rulemaking. And procedurally, we can do that. when we convene to consider all, not just the comments that have come in now, but whatever further comments come in and any additional comments. I hope that's responsive, Commissioner Holt.
It is, and for what it's worth, it seems to make sense that we follow regular order in our rulemaking and regulatory processes. And while we have had this particular motion under consideration for many months, I'm not sure that there's any exigency to the need for it, given I would expect the community's desire that we proceed with regular order and in a regular process, which I think, Sandy, is what you are suggesting that we do. I don't know if others on the commission, what their feelings are about the staff's recommendations, but I, for one, put great faith in the professionalism and the professional expertise of our staff, and would suggest that we should adhere to what the staff's request here is and defer consideration of this particular application in the context of the larger rulemaking process that we're currently engaged in.
Thank you, Commissioner Horowitz. I've got Commissioner Fisher, then Judge Braun, and Judge Yates.
Thank you, Chair. I agree with Executive Director Berlin's suggestion, and if this does get sent to the Rules Committee, two things that I would ask them to look at. First of all, whether requests made prior to the change in our policy would be subject to the same policy. And I would argue they should not be, because someone making a request, such as a whistleblower, should be notified, I believe, that the very fact of your request may be disclosed to the filer, who may be in a position of influence or even oversight of that person. So I think that should be examined carefully. I also think that the Freedom of Information Law, which I think has 6 or 7 sections to it, is fairly complicated. And before we say, yeah, let's take the New York State FOIL law, which I think is part of public officers law, and just bring it all in, let's have someone analyze it and make sure that we know what we're doing when we add FOIL to our new policy.
Thank you, Commissioner Fisher. Judge Braun? I see you, Judge Newton.
Judge Braun, you're muted, I think.
Yes, he is. Walt, are you able to unmute Judge Braun?
Let me see.
We still can't hear you, Judge.
Now,
There you go.
took a while, I don't know why. There's some conflict here between the rights of privacy of the person who makes the request, of the person whose FDS it is, versus transparency in government. I think that the nonprofit entities that sent the letter have raised some very important issues. I mostly agree with the resolution, including Judge Yates' friendly amendments. I do have an issue with the word solely, and that was raised by the outside entities that sent the letter. I also think that Judge Berland, our executive director, and Commissioner Horowitz have raised a significant issue of procedure, and I think that we should study this further, including through the Rules Committee, and bring this back before us in the future. Therefore, I move to table the resolution.
Okay, so there is a motion to table the resolution. Do we have a second?
I'll second that. I'll second that.
Thank you.
Is there any discussion on this?
After we have the second, which we now do, so yes, is there any discussion on the
Yes.
motion? Yes, Judge.
Yes. You know, there are two issues here. One that's of lesser importance, and that is my and Gary's motion, and that is access to the FDS, and then a much larger issue that just reared its ugly head. And that is, there was the last meeting, the chair indicated that she wanted to form a rules committee to look at the order of how we conduct our meetings. That's a confined issue. Nobody ever suggested that the Rules Committee was now going to become a super body that was going to be a repository for whatever substantive motions and issues are being discussed. The FDS motion that's been on the agenda for 3 or 4 meetings, I don't know how many times Gary's motion has been on and discussed, previously was in the Confidentiality Committee, which I'm on, and it was put off a couple of times for further discussion and analysis by the Confidentiality Committee. Now it's being suggested that it go over to the Rules Committee. This has nothing to do with the rules. This is very, very troubling. It's a much more significant issue to me than the FDS issue. If the Rules Committee now is going to become a place where every time there's a motion, there's a topic that's raised in the public session that one or more commissioners has an issue or a trouble with or wants to have further studied, that it goes over to the Rules Committee. It reminds me of the bad old days in the legislature where you have a Rules Committee that buries everything and is the ultimate arbiter of everything and is a subgroup of the main committee. I can't tell you how much I object to the notion that a substantive issue having nothing to do with the rules and the way we conduct our procedures, but a substantive issue is being sent off to the Rules Committee. And I'll just leave it at that. I'm very much opposed to tabling it for the purpose. I mean, I'm willing to see this particular motion, Gary's motion, my motion, my friendly amendment, being studied further by staff. That doesn't bother me. I don't mind even if we have further discussion on it. But I will fight to the death the notion that it goes off to some Rules Committee.
Thank you, Judge Yates. I will say from a procedural point, as with the other committee that you alluded to, the Confidentiality Committee, those committees do not vote and make a decision on behalf of the commission. They discuss, they have conversations, they come up with proposals, and they bring it back. I'm going to turn it over to Judge Braun on this point. I see you, Judge Newton.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
But I want to amend my motion to table. When I spoke, I didn't necessarily mean it should go to the Rules Committee. In fact, when I heard that part of the suggestion that go to the Rules Committee, I was a little surprised, actually. My motion to table is so that there can be further study by staff, and if it should go to an appropriate committee, that's fine, but I don't see why this should go to the Rules Committee. I agree with Judge Yates. There are some confidentiality, potentially some confidentiality issues involved with this resolution in terms of the filer and the requester, for that matter, if we leave it at solely, if it's not out there for the public. So therefore, I would amend my own motion to include in the tabling that it go to the confidentiality, not to the Rules Committee, which Judge Yates pointed out was established for a particular purpose. And I'm on that committee and have participated in the first committee meeting.
Thank you, Judge Braun. Judge Newton, I know you had your hand raised for this conversation, but I know you also had it raised for the main motion. Is your comment at this time with respect to the motion on the floor?
No, my comments, my direct comment is with respect to the main motion, consideration of Commissioner Levine's resolution that has been seconded with a friendly amendment by Judge Yates. And I will speak to that if it becomes necessary. Otherwise, I defer to you, Madam Chair, as to where we go next, because quite frankly, I'm not sure. Thank you.
Thank you, Judge Newton. Okay. So we now have an amended motion to table the resolution before the commission and to send it to the staff for additional consideration. Is there any other discussion on the motion to table?
May I ask a question, Madam Chair?
Yes, Commissioner Levine.
Yeah, Judge Berlin, when is the last time the Confidentiality Committee met?
I can't answer. I'm not on the committee.
No, the question is to Judge Berlin, not to you, Judge Braun.
Okay.
I have to confess, I don't have the date in front of me. I was looking at a summary the other day. We can get you that date if you just give us a moment. But let me make a clarification. I was not per se suggesting that any proposal go to any particular committee. That could be a possibility, I suppose, and that's something we would present to the commission at large. However, I was speaking to the fact that we are in the midst of formal rulemaking procedure with respect to disclosure and request for access to FDS filings. And in fact, the comment period for that proposal has not concluded yet. That will conclude sometime in July, and whatever comments come in and whether or not to adopt that proposed rule will be before the commission, most likely at its September meeting. My suggestion is that we take these various suggestions, incorporate them into that procedure, which is already underway. We have published that proposal in the state register. It's out there. We've already received a comment, in fact. That's at least in part what the June 24th letter from these various groups addresses. I would imagine we'll receive other comments, and it seems to me and to staff overall that it makes the most sense to take these comments and this proposal that has been put on the table and now with an amendment and wrap that up into that rulemaking process. And if need be, we can come up with an amended proposed rule at that time. There'll be another comment period, a shortened period procedurally, and then we can decide. But let's do it in an orderly way. My suggestion is only rather than piecemeal, in a piecemeal fashion, adopting pieces of these disclosure rules, why don't we just do it in a concerted way and come out with a real regulation as opposed to resolution on the one hand or series of resolutions and a formal rule on the other.
Thank you, Judge Berlin. Judge Newton? And then Commissioner Horowitz.
I just need a point of clarification about what we're voting on. So the vote that we will take Commissioner Levine's motion as amended, a friendly amendment by Judge Yates, that we refer it to council at office, and if so, for what purpose? My concern about it was, quite frankly, I am not familiar with the FOIL procedures and how they work. So I couldn't, in earnest, vote for the amended process without some tutelage from Judge Yates or someone else about what that would now mean to the very succinct resolution that Commissioner Levine has sent us. I applaud him in sending us today.
We're losing you, Judge Newton.
About it. So now I'm not quite sure. Sorry?
We lost the
I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Hate to sound like a commercial. So I'm not quite sure what it is we are voting to send to council and what we want them to do with it so that we can have, for me, a meaningful vote. Thank you. And I agree with our executive director's view of it all. It's very wise, but I just want to know what we're voting on right now. Thank you.
Okay. So Deputy General Counsel Levine, then Commissioners Horowitz, Judge Yates, and Commissioner Deering.
Okay, I just want to clarify where we are from a procedural perspective. There was an initial motion to adopt the resolution. That motion was seconded. There was a friendly amendment offered. The amendment was accepted. At that point, there was a motion to table. It was simply a motion to table. There was nothing attached to it. It was seconded. There was discussion on the motion to table. Then Judge Braun amended his motion to table to send it to the Confidentiality Committee. That is where we are procedurally. That amended motion has not been seconded. So essentially, we are still in discussion of the initial motion to table without any referral. It was just simply a motion to table the issue and end discussion on the main motion.
Okay. Judge Braun, did you amend your motion so that it was not going to a particular committee?
Yes.
I
only suggested that it possibly could be sent to the Confidentiality Committee, but specifically said that it was not, my motion does not mean to send it to the Rules Committee.
I would second it going to the Confidentiality Committee. And if I may briefly, I know I'm jumping ahead in turn here, but Dan, if you'll permit me briefly, the role that has been commented on and that was put out for public discussion came out of the Confidentiality Committee. It's a public comment period. So we've received a comment and we're thinking about, and we as a total commission are not considering whether that rule should be amended in light of public comment. So it seems to me that it goes back to the Confidentiality Committee until the comment period's over. Then the Confidentiality Committee comes back to the full commission to see whether or not there should be any changes in light of the various comments that were made.
Thank you, Judge. Over to Commissioner Horowitz. I think we have to do this.
Look, I think the bottom line here is that I think it sounds like there's consensus that the staff needs to look at this proposal, particularly in light of public comment and ongoing rulemaking that we're engaged in. And to the extent that commissioners, and I think Judge Newton has aptly raised the complexity, and I think Judge Fisher, Commissioner Fisher did as well, the complexity of the FOIL statute in New York and how it would apply to us as both an investigatory body and a body that, because we have FDS information or information that may be otherwise subject to the confidentiality provisions of FOIL, this is all the more reason why the staff needs to look at it. And frankly, I'm agnostic about whether this gets a referral back to the staff or to this committee or that committee. We as a commission are not sufficiently expert in these areas for us to make decisions without the input of our staff and without our staff soliciting input and having dialogue with third parties. So I just think that whatever we do, tabling this is the right thing to do. I'm agnostic about where it goes because we're going to end up, whether it's the Rules Committee or the Confidentiality Committee or the Operations Committee or the Lunch Committee, we're going to have to rely on the staff in order to sort this out. And as somebody pointed out, the staff, the committees only filter for the rest of us some thoughts about what we should do. Those committees don't have voting authority. So I think we spent a lot of time on this, and I'm glad we've had a robust discussion, and I certainly value the input of all the commissioners, but I just think, let's just vote on Judge Braun's, most recent iteration of his motion to table and get on with the rest of the business we have to do today. Thank you.
So it's a motion to table to the Confidentiality Committee, seconded by Judge Yates. Judge Braun, is that accurate?
Actually, Judge Yates, if you want to make that as a friendly amendment to send it to the Confidentiality Committee, I'll accept it, but that was not precisely what I said.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I would offer that as a friendly amendment.
Accepted.
On the motion, Madam Chair, I have a question.
Yes, Commissioner Levine.
The question is directed either to Judge Berlin or Madam General Counsel. Do I understand correctly from previous discussion that one or more members of the senior staff are aware if any inquiry was made to review a commissioner's FDS by the executive chamber, and that is the position of staff that they will not divulge this information to the full commission, even in executive session? Do I understand correctly?
Commissioner Levine, I don't believe that inquiry to be germane to the question that is currently before the commission, which is to table table the motion, table the resolution, and to send it to the confidentiality committee. So I would ask to hold that question until we finish voting on the motion on the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
No problem. So at this time, I'm going to ask, is there all in favor of tabling the motion and sending it to the confidentiality committee? Please raise your hand.
Please hold your hands up until I call the count. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 in favor.
All opposed?
1, 2, 3 opposed. 4 opposed.
Okay, thank you. So,
Now, Madam Chair, can I have the answer to the question?
yes, Deputy General Counsel Sam.
So it's not a staff position, Commissioner. I believe that you made a motion on this issue, and there was discussion on that motion, and several commissioners had raised concerns about it, and I believe that it was voted on and did not carry. And so because of that, staff is not in a position to disclose the information at this time. But that's always been my position, is that it's a commission decision, because the regulations at present do not authorize staff to disclose that information. But again, I believe, but I don't have it in front of me, that you previously made a motion to have staff disclose that, and I believe it did not carry.
Thank you, General Counsel Stan.
I could get back to you, yeah.
Item 5 on the agenda relates to new and other business. The first item underneath this section is the proposal relating to disclosing informal letter opinions. It is behind your attachment D. While we have discussed this previously, Commissioner Levine, can you speak to the resolution?
Thank you, Madam Chair. There's no principled reason, legal or otherwise, why this information should not be disclosed by the commission. I move it.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Oh, Jesus Christ.
Thank you, Commissioner Weissman. Is there any discussion?
Braun.
Yes, Judge Braun.
To Commissioner Levine, why limit it to June 28th, 2018?
Well, if I understand your question, Judge, why is the ambit limited to a 3-year look back?
Yes.
Simply to put it within the realm of practicality. But if you want to amend it to make it back since they were all produced, that's fine with me.
Thank you. Are there any additional questions from a commissioner? Okay. Is there any comment from staff on the resolution? Dan? I'm sorry.
Can the staff just remind me, because I have a question, can the staff just remind me again what the staff's position is on this particular resolution? Either Sandy or Monica?
Yeah, we have done some tests looking at.
Commissioner, I'd ask that you mute yourself, please. We have an echo here.
As a test, we've gone back and we've taken some sample letters and done the redacting. And there's a real issue from our perspective as to the utility of these, as against the effort that would be involved in going back. The staff time that would have to be devoted. to redacting out identifying information, to the extent one wouldn't be able to divine anyway, in some instances, who the requesting individual was. So there is a utility against net benefit issue from our perspective. It's just going to be a fair amount of work going back 3 years. If we're doing it prospectively, we can do it kind of in real time, with the expectation that once the letter is completed and approved, we can take out the names and make them available as appropriate. But it's going to tie up staff time, and there is a question as to the utility, the relative utility of the exercise.
Okay, General Counsel.
And just, I'm sorry.
Judge and Commissioner Horowitz.
So I just to sort of follow on to what Judge Berlin just said, I think these have never been made public before, which the commission, and when it exercised and revised the delegation back, I think it was at the April meeting, agreed that it could do this prospectively. And now the discussion is to do it, I guess, retroactively. And I'm not sure now, after Judge Braun's question, how far back in time that would go. When people sought this guidance, they didn't understand that it could be made public. But on the flip side, as the judge said, we have redacted, one just to see what it would look like. These are not the same as formal advisory opinions. There's not a lot of content. So once you redact them, they are, for the most part, sort of meaningless. And, these will live on our website, but I don't really know how much of a drain that will be on the website. We would have to figure out the technological aspects of that. Again, if we're going to be doing this for years, going back and forth, we don't have a process for that. So there's details that would have to be worked out. On the flip side, I just think the commission should consider that there could be a chilling effect on people who come to us for advice and guidance, which is one of our primary functions. They come to us to get this guidance, and they expect that it is going to be kept confidential. And obviously, again, it will be redacted, but people will be concerned about how it will look and how it will appear, and that may cause people not to come to us. And while, yes, they come to us and they get the benefit of having a defense if we ever have an action, but that's our primary goal here is to help people understand how to comply with the law. So what I would expect to happen here is that we're going to have less requests for letter opinions, and that we're not going to be fulfilling that part of our job. So I think those are the things that you have to weigh, is what the public benefit is of putting these redacted letters up, which, like I said, once redacted, they don't say anything useful. They're not going to have precedential value. Most of the guts are taken out. To the potential downside of what it means to whether people are going to be encouraged to come to us to get guidance.
Thank you, General Counsel Stam, Judge Newton, Commissioner Horowitz, and then Judge Yates.
I just wanted to share that I think Counsel Stam's chilling effect argument is very compelling. We invite people and we provide a service to help people stay in compliance, and there's assumption that it will be private, and then we make it not private. I think we can do this, but we should only do it going forward. And my second comment is that that we learned from letters that we've been receiving that the public is concerned about all of our public officials. And so I'm concerned that we are only limited to certain people. There are other important people in state government who would be excluded from this, and I don't understand why. And so I think that if we're going to redact, if we're going to share the letters of certain people, we should be prepared to share them with everybody. And I don't understand why we would not. Thank you.
Thank you, Judge Newton. Commissioner Horowitz?
So just picking up on some of the things that Judge Newton said, because these are some things that I was going to raise after my initial question. So the first is just, it sounds like there's going to be a fair amount of staff work that's involved in doing this without a lot of bang for our buck. That's number one. Number two, we have seemed to have proceeded now down a path of making significant changes to the way we conduct business in sort of a seriatim fashion that's outside the regular order of rulemaking in our regulatory process. I'm not suggesting that there's anything, you know, illegal in the sense that we don't have the authority to do it, but certainly, issues like this, we have historically solicited and received input from third parties, and I am not sure that this is an issue that, frankly, we've heard a lot about from third parties. And then the last point is the one that Judge Newton raised, which in some ways I think is the most important one. And I've sort of alluded to it in my questions about what the procedure is or what the law requires with respect to members of the legislature and their filings with the FDS and everybody else. And I guess my question is, if the public policy behind this particular resolution is, to understand what opinions have been issued to as Judge Braun said, Judge Newton said it, a certain group of important people, then why aren't we asking the Legislative Ethics Commission either in a letter, or I know that we've used the Rule 17C subpoena process to gather information. Either we could write to the LEC or we can issue a subpoena to them to make public for the legislators the same informal advice that they receive from the LEC that we want to impose on everybody else who works in the state government. So I think Judge Newton has raised an important point, and I what I come back to is that these kinds of questions really need to be analyzed by our professional staff with the solicitation and input from third parties, and that we should engage in rulemaking by the regular administrative law process that every other agency follows and that we follow for everything else. So that's my 2 cents on this particular amendment. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner. Judge Yates?
2 points I'd like to make, if you don't mind. Number one, I think, Monica, with all due respect, as the author of the resolution that was adopted in April, I think you mischaracterized it. The resolution purposely said that there would not be modifications of prior letter opinions retroactively. People got a letter opinion, they relied on it, we weren't going to go back and change it. That's good. That was Commissioner Fisher's amendment to my original proposal. I agreed with it. It was common sense and I went along with it. Nowhere did we ever say that we were limiting the ability of the commission to disclose in redacted form a letter opinion. We limited the modifications retroactively, but not the disclosure. So that's not a reason to oppose Gary's motion. Now, secondly, I don't want to spend a lot of time on this, but since Dan Horowitz has raised this twice, I'll mention it. Dan, the law distinguishes FOIL and other publication requirements for the legislature versus the executive. We should be as transparent as we can under the law. If you're unhappy with the law because you think that the legislature should have more transparency, fine. Go to the legislature and lobby for that and register yourself as a lobbyist. But please, we're not in a position to change the law right now. We should just do everything we can administratively within the law. Thank you.
Thank you, Judge Yates. Commissioner Horowitz?
Well, I wasn't going to respond, but since Jim raised the issue, we have, over the last several meetings, had a number of discussions exactly like this, where commissioners say, I want to send a subpoena for information. And people say, commissioners and staff say, well, we don't have the authority to do that because unfortunately, the law is the law. Exactly what Jim said. But when it comes to the legislature, now Jim says, oh, wait a minute. The law gives legislators special protection on the secret advice they get on ethics. Well, that doesn't stop us under 17C because as Marvin has eloquently argued, 17C is a broad stroke provision that gives us the ability to seek information for hearings, for, among other things, legislative recommendations. So I fully understand, Jim, that the legislature has invoked itself with privacy over the very information that you and Gary want to expose for everybody else who works in the state government. I was just pointing out that, as Judge Newton said, and I don't know whether she was referring to the legislature, to be fair, there seems to be a glaring inconsistency in the way in which the legislature treats itself and the way that we are now looking at everybody else who works in state government. And I think that is a significant and glaring public policy issue that maybe the legislature wants to take up when the legislators who are thinking about revising the state's ethics laws and revising JCOPE, maybe they want to think about that issue, along with all the other issues that they're thinking about the way that the state's public ethics laws can be improved and how the enforcement and regulation of those laws can be improved as well. As it relates to this particular amendment, I again rely significantly on the expertise, experience, and knowledge that our professional staff has articulated to us. And in their view, this is going to cost staff time, is not going to significantly benefit the public. And I just don't see what the public policy is. And as Judge Braun pointed out, now we have this arbitrary date that looks back. This is just not the way that an agency should go about making rules. And so that we sit around and say, hey, I've got a great idea, let's do this. And then in a public meeting, we sit around and say, yeah, you know what, would you think about this tweak or that tweak or this tweak or that tweak? There's no process. This is not the way that an administrative agency should run. And when people say, boy, that JCOPE, they really don't know what we're doing. This is Exhibit A. Here we are trying to figure it out. 13 people who are bright and have experience in government, but who are not every day working in the minds of public ethics. We have professional staff. Every month for the last 6-8 months, we have had these discussions where we solicit our professional staff. And you know what? Then we vote and we don't listen to the professional staff. Why do we even have professional staff? You know, we spent a lot of time angsting about who we should hire as our executive director. Maybe we don't need an executive director because we know better than what the professional staff has to say. And I'm sorry if I seem a bit agitated about this, but we keep doing this. We have a book, again, we have a big book of items that are ongoing work. You know, the public doesn't get to see what goes on in the executive session because it's protected. But I'm telling you that we have deferred time and time again important work so that we can take up these amendments, which we have debated ad nauseum now for almost a year. And I'm sorry again that I'm going on about this, but anyway, I'll stop and I'll compose myself. And I apologize if I was being a bit passionate about it. And I know everybody comes with the best of intentions. We're all committed. You know, we all have a lot of experience around government. Everybody is bright and they're trying to do their best. And I in no way want to suggest that the dialogue and the thoughts and the contributions that we all bring to the table aren't important and valued. So thank you for letting me carry on for a minute or two, Madam Chair, and my fellow commissioners.
Thank you, Commissioner Horowitz. General Counsel Stan, did you have your hand raised?
I did, but why don't you, I see that Judge Braun wanted to speak. Just give me one moment and then I will raise my hand again after.
Yep, it's Judge Newton first and then Judge Braun. Yes, Judge Newton.
Let me just make the record clear. I'm not as smart as Commissioner Horowitz suggested. I was just saying that it seems to me we should try to give advice to people when they ask, and we should be respectful of that advice. You know, many years I was on the Judiciary Commission on Judicial Conduct, as have some of my colleagues on this commission been on. I know Commissioner Pirro, and I was also on the Court System Commission to provide ethical advice to judges. And I know how very, very important that notion of privacy and the ability to come to someone to get clarity, to get advice, and to be told the law and the court system is if the committee tells you, a commission tells you you can do something and you do it, it would prevent the Commission on Judicial Conduct from bringing action against you if it happened to be wrong. And so it's a very compelling thing for me that when someone comes to a group like such as this asking for ethical advice, it should be made public without letting them know going forward that if you ask us advice, we may publicize it. And I think that that was my main point. And I didn't know, we talk broadly about stuff, and I don't ever know who is going to be brought within the ambit of our reach when we pass these resolutions. And I just say we need to be cautious because a lot of people could be brought in the ambit of these resolutions, and we should be mindful that these people sought advice and privacy, not advice and let me tell the whole world what's going on. And that's my comment about, I know nothing about the legislative process and their, and I miss Judge Yates' comments, I always learn a lot from him, and their aspect of privilege. I just say this is an amendment that if we do, it should be prospectively and it should not go back to any date, in my opinion, because I think that's tripping people up to say, come to us with advice, and then we say, gotcha, we're going to tell everybody what you wanted to know. That's bad enough, and what we told you. And I think that that's just my position. Thank you, Madam Chair, for letting, and I will not raise this issue again. Thank you.
Thank you, Judge Newton. I'm very aware of our time, Commissioners. So we've got Judge Braun and Commissioner DePiro. Did you have your hand raised?
You said I'm next, and I want to speak before my plugged-in iPad battery runs out. So
We can't hear you, Judge Braun.
I'm unmuted.
Yes, we just need you to get a little closer to the microphone.
Okay. I'm going to try to make this quick before my battery runs out, though my iPad is plugged in. I don't know why it's running down. In any event, Judge Newton, in my view, has raised a compelling issue. People came to us to ask for advice. I don't think it's appropriate now to change the rules of the game and say that though it would not be disclosed, all of a sudden we're changing it so that it will be disclosed. Prospectively would be another story, and I'm open to the possibility of voting to support the resolution for prospective disclosure. And General Counsel Stam raises another issue that relates to this. Okay, so the staff would have to do work redacting. General Counsel Stam indicated that would make all, or at least many of the a number of the opinions, advisory opinions have been issued, inexplicable to remove all the identifying information. On the other hand, we know that some people will look at these disclosures and try to figure out who it's about, and if they can't be enough of a redaction of identifying information, they can. That goes back to what Judge Newton raised and what I agree with. It wouldn't be fair to those people because they expected something different, and now we'd be changing the rules of the game retroactively.
Madam Chair, if I may.
One moment, Commissioner Levine. Very quickly, General Counsel Stam, and then Commissioner Levine.
So this is just to go to, I think, Judge Newton's concern, Judge Braun's concern, and to Judge Yates. And I apologize, Judge Yates, if I'm not reading this correctly, but what I was referring to when I was talking about the delegation, so I thought that there had been some agreement on this, was the commission reserves the right to publish prospective informal letter opinions in redacted form. So it was my understanding that the commission had given this some consideration, and that is what is concluded. Now, granted, it's silent on what you could do looking backwards, but it was clear that the commission put people on notice that going forward, informal letter opinions could be made public, and I thought that that was part of the consensus that the commission reached when it approved that. So that is what I was referring to, and I apologize if I misstated or misinterpreted, because to me it's clear about going forward, but not looking back. And so I think that goes to Judge Newton and Judge Braun's point.
Thank you, General Counsel Stam. Commissioner Levine.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The ambit of the proposal is limited to statewide elected officials and agency heads, precisely to obviate the question, the issue, the consideration of chilling effect. Those who are within the ambit at this high level of state government should not be chilled by disclosure in any respect. In fact, as a matter of public policy, we ought to ensure that they adhere to the basic precept of openness to the maximum.
Thank you, Commissioner Levine. So we, at this point, I don't see any additional hands. We will move to vote. All in favor of the resolution, please raise your hand.
Just keep your hands up until I call the count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I see 5 in favor.
All opposed?
3, 4, 5, 6. I see 6 opposed.
Any abstentions?
Commissioner DePiero appears not to be present for the vote, and Commissioner Jacob had, Commissioner DePiero is here. Commissioner Jacob had his hand up in the
I had my hand up, yes. I wasn't counted.
Okay, so we'll do the count again. All in favor of the resolution, please raise your hand.
1 at the top, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 in favor. Okay. That's
All opposed?
3, 4, 5 at the top, 6, 7.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
6, 7, motion fails.
Okay. Are there any other items under new and other business?
Yes.
Madam Chair,
Go ahead.
this is Commissioner Weissman. I'd like to address a new issue, if I may.
Yes, Commissioner Weissman.
Thank you very much. And I've been having discussions with the staff over the last month, basically. It was reported that the commission disclosed some information. The information itself is not confidential by law. The information ended up in the newspapers. I have requested staff, if they felt comfortable, when we get these information requests, to report to the commission in executive session, if that's where the comfort lies. And at this point in time, the staff is just refusing to accept the notion that commissioners as a whole should be informed when the commission is releasing information to different bodies. And I just find this, again, it's a new issue, but it's an old problem, and it just has to go with sharing information. What I've been discussing with staff has nothing to do with interfere with their business. It's just an informational question, and I can't seem to get staff to understand the simple concept that on a monthly basis, they should just tell us what's going on and move on. Thank you very much.
So Commissioner Weissman, I see General Counsel Stam, you have your hand raised, but I just want to be clear on whether or not you are making a statement or if there's a specific question. I know that you're talking about staff sharing information. I'm not sure if you can characterize that information with a little bit more specificity.
Well, if staff wants to do it more specificity, that's fine by me. But as I'm saying, as a matter of law, the information we're talking about is not confidential. So that's why I feel comfortable raising the withholding of this information and discussing it in the public session.
General Counsel Stam?
I wanted to clarify because Commissioner Weissman is referring to discussions, I think primarily with me, that I never refused to share information with the commission under any circumstances. What I said is that we should have a discussion with the full commission about the parameters of this discussing and disclosing this information, because when we receive this information request, we are asked to keep that information confidential, regardless of whether the law requires us to keep it confidential. And so I wanted to have a discussion with the full commission about their view on whether or not they would honor those requests to keep it confidential or not, and how they wanted us to proceed with those requests. And so once the commission discusses this issue, I'm happy to share the information, but I absolutely in no means refuse to share the information. I even told Commissioner Weissman I'm happy to provide him with the information that he requested, but that we need to have a full discussion, which I believe would be easier to have in an executive session so we could be more specific.
Okay.
Madam Chair, may I respond?
Yes, Commissioner Weissman, I do have a question.
I will be brief. To begin with, if we're reading about the information in a newspaper, the argument regarding confidentiality falls flat on its face. A. B, the point that General Counsel Stam raises, that she's willing to share it with me, raises even larger issues. Because from where I sit, this is information that should be shared with the commission as a whole. Again, it's not something that would take a lot of the commission's time. It's a very brief, and in some months, it wouldn't even arise, the issue wouldn't even arise. But nevertheless, this is just a problem from where I sit, from the day I joined this commission. I've raised it in the past, as I say, an old problem, but it's a new issue. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Commissioner Weissman, to General Counsel Stam's point, would you be willing to continue this conversation today in executive session?
If nobody else has anything to add in it, I again don't want to hold up the commission from whatever other business it needs to attend to today.
So I do understand, but we want to make sure that we do have robust conversation about your point, and my impression is that the information that you're discussing might be better suited for executive session. So with your agreement, we can continue this conversation. I would just move it to the executive session portion so we can have a more fulsome conversation.
Madam,
do you have any objection? I think you're muted.
excuse me, I apologize.
Okay.
It's fine to move it into executive session, but I am reserving the right to maintain this as a public issue because as a matter of law, the information is not confidential.
Understood.
So thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Levine?
Yes, Madam Chair, I have a series of motions. Let me begin by addressing the breach of confidentiality that occurred in the meeting and after the meeting of January 2019.
Okay. What is the motion with respect to this item?
The motion is that pursuant to Section 63 of the Executive Law, that the breach of confidentiality and the manner in which it was investigated be referred to the Attorney General. And specifically, pursuant to Section 63, that the Executive Director be instructed to make the referral to the Attorney General.
Okay. Is there a second? Thank you.
Commissioner Muffiner seconds.
Thank you. Is there any discussion? I will offer the floor to you first, Commissioner Levine, to speak to your motion.
Thank you very much, Chair. There is no question that following the meeting on January January
One moment,
2019.
Commissioner. One moment, Commissioner Levine. Commissioners, can I ask that everybody else mute their line so that we can hear Commissioner Levine clearly? Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll begin again. There is no question that there was a breach of confidentiality that occurred subsequent to the meeting conducted by the Commission in January of 2019. Confidential information regarding an investigation was divulged to the governor. The governor confronted the speaker with respect to the votes cast by the speaker's appointees. The breach of confidentiality was duly reported to the Office of Inspector General as required by our enabling statute. A purported investigation was conducted under the aegis of the Executive Deputy Inspector General. The Executive Deputy Inspector General continued to assert that there was no basis to find that the breach of confidentiality occurred, even after it was publicly acknowledged by certain of the participants that the breach did, in fact, occur. Subsequently, a number of commissioners, Commissioner McNamara, Commissioner Weissman, and myself, pursued discussion with the Office of the New York County District Attorney and the Office of the Albany County District Attorney. For various reasons stated, and I surmise some not stated, they have declined to make an inquiry into the breach of confidentiality. The Albany County District Attorney, through the chief of his Public Integrity Bureau, specifically suggested a referral to the Attorney General. The executive law provides for such a referral. It's Section 63.
Thank you, Commissioner Levine. Judge Yates?
I'm going to abstain on this vote, but since there was reference that obliquely or indirectly affects me, I need to explain why I'm abstaining. Shortly after that meeting, the January meeting in 2019, it came to my attention that the governor was complaining about my vote at that meeting. I reported that because obviously if the governor right after the meeting knew about the vote, that means that the vote and the executive session had somehow or other been leaked to the governor. I reported that to the Inspector General. First, I reported it over to the executive director, and I was told that the Inspector General was the right person. I reported it to the Inspector General, and then I went in and under oath testified for almost an hour, answering every question I could about that conversation and how I learned about the governor, someone having leaked to the governor. Nothing happened that I could tell over the next year or so. I'm a little concerned sometimes when there's an investigation that continues 2 years later, whether somehow or other the witness to an offense will be caught up and being blamed somehow or other as a participant in the offense, which is why I need to make this public statement. I did nothing more than learn about someone leaking to the governor, complain to the Inspector General, and answer every question the Inspector General gave to me. Now, about a year after that, the Inspector General put out a report that said that there was no, I don't know the exact words, but no basis or reason to believe that there had been a leak to the governor. I don't know how the governor would have known about our vote enough to complain about my vote within an hour of the meeting without someone leaking to the governor. I don't know whether the Inspector General ever interviewed the governor and asked him the very simple basic question. Hey, Governor, who leaked to you? I don't know. I do think it's a little preposterous that under the rules and the law, the Inspector General is to investigate and write a report to the governor. So when you think about it, it's a little Alice in Wonderland. The Inspector General investigates who leaked to the governor by not interviewing the governor, maybe, I don't know if he did or didn't, and then reports to the governor on who leaked to the governor. But anyway, putting that all aside, I feel that it's appropriate for me to abstain on this particular vote, but I did not want to leave it hanging around that the witness to an offense who reported it, who called it in, is somehow or other implicated in it. And that's why I had to make this statement.
Thank you, Judge Yates. Is there any additional discussion or comment? Yes, Commissioner McNamara.
So I seconded the motion because I fundamentally disagree with any suggestion that this matter is much to do about nothing. This involves the integrity of the commission. That's a big deal, especially when considering it in the context of the mission of the commission. It's a very big deal. This is a matter that resulted in the resignation of a well-regarded commissioner, a very valuable participant in the commission's deliberations, and that resignation impeded the work of the commission for several months. It's a big deal. And based upon what has come to light about the investigation itself, I am not confident that standard operating procedure investigative tactics were deployed in reaching the outcome of the so-called investigation. So for those reasons, I support Commissioner Levine's motion, and I believe everybody else should also.
Thank you, Commissioner. Are there any additional comments on the motion? Don't see any hands. Is there any? Yes, Judge Newton. We can't hear you, Judge Newton. You're still muted.
Thank you, I'm sorry. Is the motion to ask our executive director to speak with and refer this matter to the Attorney General of New York State? Is that the motion?
Yes.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Well, Madam Chair, not precisely. The motion is that pursuant to Section 63 of the Executive Law, the Executive Director is instructed to refer potential criminal matters connected with the breach of confidentiality to the Attorney General.
Thank you for the clarification, Commissioner Levine. Are there any additional comments from any commissioner or staff? Yes, Commissioner DePiero. I think you're still muted. Walt, are you able to assist?
Let me try. No, Commissioner DePiero has to do it herself. I can't.
Hey, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you now.
So I have some very real inner angst about this whole thing. If that was my first meeting in Albany, the January meeting we're referring to, I clearly was way in over my head. I'm not an attorney. I'm not a judge. I did serve for many years on the Judicial Commission and felt that I played a very viable part and was well thought of. But there weren't the undercurrents on the Judicial Commission. We always just responded to the case at hand. There wasn't all kinds of little pockets of dissension and political adversaries like we seem to have here. I'm going to abstain from this vote only because I don't feel I'm qualified to be able to. I don't like, if there was something illegal done, and in fact there was a leak from one of our members or a staff member to the governor's office, I absolutely feel that it should be investigated. However, I think it was George that said that he thinks there was illegal activity, and I think in my limited knowledge, that we're already attributing a crime to something that we're going in to investigate. I just feel that the other members of the commission are much better suited and much more educated relative to the law to make a decision of this magnitude. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner DePiero. Are there any other comments or questions from the commissioners or from staff? Okay. Seeing no hands, we will move to a vote. All in favor, I'm sorry. Deputy General Counsel Levine, can you please restate the motion?
The motion is to direct the executive director under Executive Law, Section 63, to refer to the Office of the Attorney General the alleged leak of confidential information from January 2019.
Okay. I do have a question. General Counsel Stam, consistent with law, is this motion appropriate? Meaning what the ultimate request is to refer it to the Attorney General. Is it your understanding that it's consistent with law that we can do so?
I'm struggling with the fact that as you know, Commissioner Yates referenced and others referenced, the law provides that these investigations are to be conducted by the Inspector General's office. And that's what 94.9-A expressly says. That was the determination of the legislature and the governor who signed this law. This was done at the time that JCOPE was created, and the creation of JCOPE was preceded by a leak by its predecessor agency, and this was the solution that the legislature came up with, and it is explicit. So that's why I'm struggling with whether or not the commission as a whole can designate another body to conduct an investigation when it clearly is meant to be done by the Inspector General's office. I don't know of compatible or similar statutes that provide otherwise. And so that I'm hesitant to present an opinion on that without looking into it further, but that gives me pause.
Thank you. Yes, Judge Newton.
You know, it seems to me one of the threshold questions that Counsel Stam is referencing, as well as the statute that Commissioner Levine corrected me when I tried to state the motion, is whether or not you can refer something that's non-criminal. I am not familiar with the statute pursuant to which Executive Director Berlin would be acting. But to allay the concerns about Ms. Stam, I think that notwithstanding the very strict construction of the statute that created JCOPE, if one thinks that there's a crime, I think you can always report that to an agency. But I think Commissioner DePiero is very wise, wiser than she thinks she is, because the question of whether or not there is criminality is a complex one. And because of the general conversation of what happened, could it have been criminal, was the handling by the IG less than appropriate? I think all of those point to the direction that somebody appropriate should look into these concerns. And I think that notwithstanding Ms. Stam's hesitation, that it would be appropriate for us to vote on whether or not this should go to another body to look into the full scope of what was the nature of what happened, what transpired in its totality. Thank you.
Thank you. So all in favor of the motion that is currently on the floor, please raise your hand.
All right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 in favor.
All opposed?
1, 2, 2 opposed. 3, I'm sorry. Let me record those. You guys are good.
4, right? And any abstentions? I believe Commission 2.
1. I have 2, Yates and DePiero, so that's 6, 4, 2. Who did I miss? Was there another?
Judge Braun.
Judge Braun, how are you voting? I apologize.
It's Judge Braun.
The commission at the time, so I need more information. I've heard a lot, but I'm going to abstain.
Motion fails, ma'am.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, may I direct a question to the Deputy General Counsel?
Yes. Is it on the motion that
Yes,
just
it
failed?
is. Yes.
Yes.
Who's recorded in the negative, please?
Just a moment. I'll get that for you. In the negative, I had Chair Varlak, Commissioner Deering, Commissioner Fisher, and Commissioner Horowitz. Is that correct, Dan? Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Yes. Commissioner Levine, did you have any other items?
I do.
Okay.
The chair of the Senate Ethics Committee, Senator Biaggi, has indicated that the committee will be conducting hearings starting this summer with respect to reform of the JCOPE enabling statute and presumably other ethics considerations. A number of well-known groups who have an interest in this subject have called for testimony, I gather compelled if necessary, by former and current members of the commission. I move that in the event that any commissioner, former commissioner, or member of the staff is subpoenaed to testify before a standing committee of either house, that the commission in advance waives all confidentiality to the maximum extent permitted by 9A, with the proviso that the testimony is an executive session.
Thank you. There is a motion on the floor. Is there a second?
I think Commissioner Weissman there.
Thank you, Commissioner Weissman. Is there any discussion? Okay. No, I don't see any hands from any of the commissioners. Is there any comments from staff?
Madam Chair, on the motion.
Yes, Commissioner Dunn.
There would be no need for the motion if a standing committee of the legislature could grant testimonial immunity. If I understand the legislative law, only joint legislative committees can grant testimonial immunity. So far as I know, there are no joint legislative committees extant. Therefore, the conclusion is the Senate Ethics Committee or any other standing committee would not be able to grant testimonial immunity. The public interest will be advanced by permitting commissioner, former commissioner, or senior staff to testify to the maximum extent that our statute permits. That's the basis and the rationale for the resolution.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Levine. Is there any, yes, Commissioner Horowitz?
Thank you. I just have some questions for the staff. Has the staff conducted any sort of survey about how other legislative bodies handle their regulatory oversight over enforcement bodies? So, for example, when Congress holds hearings over the Securities and Exchange Commission, and as everybody I think knows, the SEC can and does conduct its investigations pursuant to law, under confidentiality. I'd be curious to know, and I'm sure there are other congressional oversight committees and Congress has oversight over other regulatory bodies, such as the Federal Trade Commission or the Department of Justice, for that matter, that conducts both confidential civil and criminal matters. What's the precedent for oversight legislative bodies getting access to investigatory materials that are otherwise confidential by law? I mean, I think it's important that we get an answer to that question. I'd at least like to know what the precedent is here before voting on this motion. And I guess the only other question I had was jurisdictional. I heard that in the recitation of the resolution that there's some direction related to former members of the commission, and I just don't understand what the jurisdictional hook is for us to compel to provide authority to a legislative body about people who are no longer on the commission. That's a much more minor issue, but I am curious about the first one.
Thank you, Commissioner Howard. So I'm going to ask staff to respond. And an additional question that I have is whether or not, other than what we have seen or heard, that there may be hearings, have we received any direct communication about these hearings? Do we have any additional information?
To my knowledge, we have not been contacted directly by anybody of the legislature with respect to the recent news reports. So the answer is no, we don't. Okay. We don't know, and that directly bears on Commissioner Horowitz's observation. We have not had an opportunity to explore those issues, and we have at least two areas of confidential information. We have filer and requester specific information as well as investigative information that were required by law in many respects to maintain in confidence. We also have internal deliberations of the commission, which are protected. And having not yet heard anything from the legislature or any committee of the legislature with respect to any requests for testimony or information, it's very difficult. It's totally abstract, frankly, to know what we might be asked and then to explore what our obligations are under the statute in terms of maintaining confidentiality. I think it would be very difficult, certainly at this point, to simply waive without knowing what we're waiving precisely. The protections that we're required to afford to information, certain information that comes to us.
Thank you, Judge. Commissioner Fisher?
Madam Chair, I'd like to explain why I plan to vote against this motion. I've been on numerous, easily a dozen to 15 nonprofit boards, and really try to pay careful attention to corporate governance. A board like this should act as a board, as a unit, I believe, and we should take a vote. And if we took a majority vote and we decided this is what we would like to bring to the state senate or the state legislature as the will of this board, I would be all for that. But for individual members of a board to go off and ask the entity that created the board in the first place to change it works directly against that core principle, and therefore I think it's a bad idea.
Thank you, Commissioner Fisher. Judge Yates, did I see your hand up?
You did. I don't want to prolong this unnecessarily, but I think there were a couple of misstatements about the law. And I maybe it's worth me saying it. I guess if you'll indulge me a minute. First of all, Gary, although to some extent I support the concept in your motion, testimonial immunity has nothing to do with this. So let's not get confused. Testimonial immunity is when a person's asserting a Fifth Amendment privilege. Under New York law, it's going to be transactional, not a use immunity, and that's not even the issue here. So let's put that aside and not get confused. You did, and one aspect of your motion that I thought was well constructed is you said that you're asking the commission to waive confidentiality to the extent that 9A permits it. And that's an excellent way of phrasing it, because being on the Confidentiality Commission, I can tell you that we have not resolved, it's an open question, about what the scope of the waiver under 9A is. 9A allows us to disclose certain information. It's an open question about whether it allows us to disclose underlying investigative materials that we obtain during the course of a confidential investigation. So if your motion were about information in general, statistical information, et cetera, this would be a no-brainer. You know, sure, legislative committee wants to know about our procedures and our statistics. Sure, no problem. But when you start getting into investigative materials that may be covered by 13 as opposed to 9, it's always been Monica's position. I don't want to speak for you, Monica, but I'll repeat what you've said, that that's a broader protection. That may be a statutory protection, and there's an open question about whether that's waivable under 9A. And so to me, that's unclear. I know in discussions with other members have pointed out that from time to time under 9A, we authorize during an investigation confidential information about an investigation to be disclosed. For instance, we will direct staff by vote sometimes go off and interview such and such during an investigation. And to the extent that you need to get cooperation, you can disclose information about the status of the investigation. That's true. I guess a good argument could be made that that's limited just to a direction to staff to under 9A to disclose information when it's necessary in order to conduct the investigation, but it's not a general waiver of confidentiality with regard to investigative materials. I'm sorry if I'm going on and on and on here, but this is a question that has 5 or 6 legal aspects that need to be parsed. And even though I agree with the general notion that Gary has, and that is that if the legislature asks us to come on in and explain how we do things and how we voted and what our statistics are and what our procedures are, I think we absolutely should cooperate. And we could generally say, yes, any subpoenaed person can go do that. But there are these other open questions that still trouble me. And I guess that's all I'll say right now.
Okay, thank you very much.
Madam Chair, if I may respond to Judge Yates.
Yes, Commissioner Levine, I would just ask that if possible, if we can keep it on the brief side. I realize that it is already 12:30 and we still have a significant amount of work to conduct.
Right, and I still have another motion for the public session.
Okay.
Your Honor, Judge Yates, I'm addressing your critique of my inartful use of terminology is well grounded in the colloquial expression of it. As I understand it, the legislative law provides that a joint legislative committee may grant immunity from criminal prosecution for matters testified to on notice to the pertinent district attorney. There is no such provision with respect to standing committees of either house, which is the basis, I repeat for emphasis, of the motion. Now, if Senator Biaggi is to proceed on the timetable that she has indicated publicly, the question is invited, if we don't take action today and a subpoena is served between now and our next meeting, what is our posture supposed to be? So, Madam Chair, I continue to move the proposition. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Levine. All in favor of the motion that is on the floor, please raise your hand.
McCarthy, Yates. That's 5.
Okay. All opposed?
No.
Sorry, I'm just recording these. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 in favor, 5 opposed, 1 missing. We should have 2 votes. Any abstention?
Any abstention?
Yeah, this is, I voted in favor. Commissioner Jacob.
6 in favor. As far as I can tell, yes.
Okay.
Well, Madam Chair, may we have noted who recorded in the negative, please?
We actually need to just take the vote one more time to make sure we've captured everyone. So if I would ask again, all in favor of the motion on the floor, please raise your hand.
Levine, Weissman, McCarthy, Yates, Jacob. Yes.
All opposed, please raise your hand.
Barlack, Fisher, Horwitz, DePiro, Newton, Braun, and then the only one.
I have 6 versus 7.
I'll take Monica's count.
Well, no. Does anyone else?
Commissioner McNamara, I didn't see your hand.
In favor.
Got that. Okay. 4, 5, 6. It's 6-6 because Commissioner Deering is not in the room.
Okay.
So.
Oh. That's what I'm missing. Okay. I thought I saw a hand. So that's 6-6.
Okay. Commissioner Levine, you asked for the vote?
I think I have it. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay. Had another motion, Commissioner Levine?
I do. Last one for the public session. Thank you very much. Evidently, there were over $1 billion worth of procurements made for supplies during the health emergency. I move that staff be directed to ascertain whether any of these contracts were exempt by executive order from the normal pre-pandemic procurement protocols. If so, if these contracts were approved by the controller, and if so, that all contracts of $1 million or more be obtained by staff. And if it is the circumstance that these contracts are within the ambit of an executive order exempting the procurements from the conventional pre-pandemic procurement protocols, that an informational subpoena be directed to the Commissioner of Health for this information. Again, all contracts, $1 million or more.
Okay. There is a motion on the floor. Is there a second? Okay. I do not see a second to the motion.
McCarthy.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioner McCarthy. Before we proceed with any discussion, I will note, and I think I've said this before, that I think any conversation with respect to a subpoena or the potential issuance of a subpoena by this commission, that conversation should take place in executive session. Commissioner Levine, are you willing to move this conversation to today's executive session?
I am not, Madam Chair.
Okay. Is there any discussion? Commissioner Horwitz. You're muted.
Yeah, I agree that this is not something that should be handled in the public session. And what I'm concerned about is if the commission decides to go ahead with this resolution, that the recipients of the subpoena will have a built-in defense if they want to move to quash the subpoena. So I've said this several times today. There's a good reason legally and for public policy reasons for us to follow regular order, so that our decision-making process is not subject to attack. And this is a perfect example of why we need to follow regular process. That's my first point. Second is really a quick question and then a follow-up question to Sandy and to the staff. Have you had an opportunity before today's meeting to discuss or digest the substance of this particular resolution, Sandy? Or is this the first you're hearing about it?
No, we had advance notice from.
Okay, so let me just, because I know we're on a tight timetable. I'd like the staff to give us a sense of how much work it's going to take for the staff to do all of the things that are in this resolution, and what the impact of doing that work will be on the other existing ongoing work that we have before us, some of which is encapsulated in this book that we still have yet to get to today. So if you could give us a sense of what the impact on staff time and resources will be, I'd appreciate it. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Horowitz. Are there any?
Yeah, I can respond to that. We have begun the process. We certainly have not gotten very far along in it. When I say we had noticed, not particularly long period of time to assess it. We don't at this point know whether, notwithstanding the impact of Executive Order 202 and the various follow-on executive orders, whether the procurement contracts that Commissioner Levine has in mind were indeed filed with the Controller's Office. So we haven't yet had the opportunity to ascertain that. There certainly were modifications of the procurement procedures in the law. We certainly don't know how many potentially responsive contracts there would be if we were able to identify the correct entity for these. And we remain uncertain as to what we would do if we were to receive some number, potentially a great number, as Commissioner Levine has indicated. He believes something on the order of $1 billion or more in such contracts may be out there at $1 million each. That's at least 1,000 contracts. And it's not entirely clear to me at this point, and maybe more texture could be provided by the Commissioner, what we would be looking for in these contracts. There's been some discussion about that, but it's speculation on our part. So the amount of staff time is impossible to calculate. It could be quite substantial. So that's as much as I can say at this point, because we just have not had the opportunity to explore the subject in a whole lot of depth.
Thank you, Judge Berlin. Judge Newton?
Yes, I believe that I am forced to vote no on this because I think we have not met the threshold question of whether or not this is a subject matter for public meeting or whether it's for executive session. After last month's lengthy discussion on the authority of the JCOPE to issue subpoenas, I took an opportunity to look at the statute, and I respectfully disagree with some of my commissioners and would urge that we not address this issue until we have an official writing from council staff led by the executive director as to the meaning of when we can, in fact, issue a subpoena. In my humble opinion, there is no such thing as an informational or investigative subpoena. There is a subpoena for the person, and there's a subpoena ducis tecum. And as I read the law, we have to be in investigative session to issue a subpoena. Now, a subpoena can give us information, it can give us people, it can give us testimony, it can give us things. And that requires that we first engage the statutory provisions that give us the authority to issue a subpoena. And I respectfully believe that we must be in executive session, open an investigation to issue a subpoena. And I would urge that we ask that. It does not matter what my opinion is. It will affect my vote or another person's opinion, commissioner's opinion, but we can only do this as a group if we have, in my opinion, official legal representation, recommendation, and advice from Judge Berlin and his council staff. And I think this is a matter that cannot and should not be addressed in public session because, in my opinion, it's contrary to law.
Thank you, Judge Newton. Commissioner Deering.
For similar reasons, if this proceeds to a vote, I'm going to abstain because I don't think it's appropriate for a public session.
Thank you, Commissioner Deering. Commissioner Levine, with the most recent comments that were made, I will again ask you to consider moving the discussion and vote on this topic to executive session today.
And I will again decline the request, Madam Chair.
Thank you. All in favor of the motion on the floor, please raise your hand.
Madam Chair?
Yes?
Yeah, I've had my hand up for a while. I apologize. I know I'm a ways away from New York at the moment. It's okay. On Judge Berlin's point, the first part of this exercise is a simple request to the state controller's office. Every penny paid on behalf by the state is audited by the controller. If a contract, to make a payment, you need a contract or a purchase order. And this is all within the realm of the what used to be called the central accounting system, and Monica can give the new name of statewide something or other. However, so the work part of this exercise, the first part, is not really something that's going to be difficult for this agency because it's going to be done up in the controller's office. After that, it depends where you go. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Weissman, and apologies that I missed your hand. All in favor of the motion on the floor, please raise your hand.
Okay, I see McNamara, Levine, Weissman, McCarthy, JCOPE.
Okay. All opposed?
I see DePiro, Horowitz, Yates, Newton, Ron. Okay.
And abstention.
And Fisher, I'm sorry. I see Varlak and Deering in abstaining. Motion does not carry.
Thank you. Are there any other items under new and other business? Okay. With that, can I please have a motion to move into executive session pursuant to Executive Law, Section 9419B?
So moved, Deering.
Second, Fisher.
Thank you. All in favor, please raise your hands.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. It's unanimous.
Thank you. Walt, can you please let us know when we're in executive session?
Stand by, please. Madam Chair, we're in public session.
Thank you very much. General Counsel Stam, can you please report out on the actions taken in executive session?
Sure. We discussed litigation and personnel matters. The Commission granted an application for exemption from the post-employment restrictions pursuant to Public Officers Law, Section 738-B. The Commission approved 4 informal letter opinions pursuant to Executive Law 9416. The Commission commenced 1 substantial basis investigation, and the Commission authorized steps in several investigative matters, closed 6 matters, and discussed several other investigative matters.
Thank you. Can I please have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
I'll move, Deering.
Second, Fisher.
All in favor?
3, 4, 5, 8. We're good.
Thank you.